Is it fair to blame others for my pain?
Brannon, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I saw you a couple times over the weekend. It was good seeing you.
It was nice to see you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever I can see any of my siblings, it just makes my day. So,
Oh, it's always a nice treat, man.
yeah. It's just fun spending time together, you know. But yeah, you're looks like Survivor, your guy's doing pretty well.
Well, he put a big target on himself this week because now everyone's gonna want to kick him out because he's just a good dude.
Yeah, that's true.
But
But
but the episode itself was awesome. I feel good about the guy I picked now because I'd rather have a guy like that than like someone who's the other way. So
yeah, yeah.
for those
Um,
who listen, and we do this Survivor challenge every season where me and my siblings get together and we throw a little bit of money in the pot and we each pick a horse in the Survivor season. And
I've actually watched all 47 seasons, and
oh my
I've
God,
applied before. I've
yeah.
submitted a video.
You've applied to
Oh
Survivor?
yeah, yeah. I showed myself cold plunging and running around with my long hair and stuff. But they didn't bite on it. I
For
guess
some reason, they didn't take it.
I gotta try again. So,
I didn't know you were that big of a super fan, man.
oh, I love Survivor. It's yeah, for years. Oh, my kids, we've all watched it together. So,
That game, for some reason, that game just makes me feel like you can't be a better human for having gone on it.
uh,
But
wait.
it sure is entertaining.
Oh, I see. Because it makes you lie
It
and
makes you just
stuff.
like, yeah, it makes you just, it presses on all of your values.
Yeah. There was a there was a show called I'll tell you this real quick, then we'll get into the content. There's a show called Outlast on Netflix.
I've seen it.
And episode or the first season,
It's
it just
terrible.
it made you feel horrible. And the second season was like humanity is good.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
dang, these people are such good people. Yeah, it was they banded together, they were loyal, they didn't make it about money. It was amazing. So, anyways, yeah, reality shows they can bring out the best and the worst in people. Um, so, Tyler, let's get into it here with is it fair to blame others for my pain? Um, another question is that goes along with this is why should I have to do my healing work when someone else has done something to me
When it's
uh,
not my fault.
when it's not my fault? We get this question all the time, and it's the. Let me give it an analogy to start, if you don't mind. Just last week, I was pulling out of my cul-de-sac, and there was a horrible car accident just right out on the road right here, and we happen to know the person, and you know, it's not her fault. The wreck wasn't her fault, but now she has her foot is crushed and she has all this work to do and she went through a massive amount of pain. And the truck that hit her doesn't have like can't do that work in terms of physical therapy and healing and it can't. Although the truck hit her.
Right.
So she could sit back and just be angry, just be upset, just be at the situation, right?
Of course. I mean, most people would be. In fact, it would be normal.
It's okay to be.
Spend some time there. Yes.
And ultimately, that's part of the healing process. Ultimately, wanting that other person to pay, wanting that other person to fix it doesn't get it fixed. Correct?
Exactly. I think that's one of the hardest things that we go through as human beings sometimes, actually, is we have it primed in our brains to look for and we want everything to be balanced, and that means the balance, including the balance between justice and mercy. And if somebody has done something to us, if somebody has taken something from us, or somebody has, stepped over our values in some way, or somebody has harmed us in some way, the natural tendency is for us to want to find justice, right? Like it's built into us. to want to find justice. And it's not really fair. It's not really fair that somebody could do something to me and have there not be full justice and then have it, in fact, and we've been accused of this before, Brannon, is the whole famous line, the famous kind of statement out there right now is that you're victim blaming now. You're
Hmm.
victim blaming now because if you talk to anybody who's been wronged by somebody and you suggest any part of accountability for their own well-being to move forward, then you're victim blaming.
Which is it, let's differentiate the two because yes, I've gotten accused of that in the past, and it's kind of frustrating because when let's say a partner who's been betrayed. Um, Let me back up a little bit. Betrayal's interesting because it's not like a car accident totally, because it feels a little bit sometimes like the person who betrayed they did it mindfully and deliberately.
That's what it feels
Um,
like for sure. And sometimes
yeah,
that's true.
yeah, oftentimes it is. The that still doesn't change this principle like that, and that's what kind of sucks is like, okay, an accident is an accident, but you deliberately mindfully made choices that hurt me. Now I want you to fix that because you did these things.
Yes.
But the principle still doesn't change, which is you're still responsible for your own healing. uh you know, and so coming back to the victim blaming thing, um and you and I have both been here before, is when somebody comes in and they're in a lot of emotional pain, and they're in a place of anger and frustration, and they're wanting to stay there. They're just wanting to stay there, and they're not wanting to do their own work to heal. And we push them a little bit to look at what is in their control to do their own work. They turn around and they say, "You're blaming me now for what happened, and I didn't cause this."
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is we are not blaming you. No, there's no blame. And we know that in order for you to actually heal, it's not fair. This is not fair. But
It's
in
not
order for
right.
you to actually heal, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what is in my control to actually start to go through the process of healing here, so that I can gain something in terms of finding peace, establishing safety and boundaries for myself, ultimately finding God more through this experience, versus just staying stuck here.
Yeah. There's like here's maybe an example of between the two, victim blaming versus like trying to move people into healing. Um, you hear this, you used to hear this all the time, like there'd be something in the news or something, there's a frat party and there's somebody got raped, and then everybody turns and questions the person who got raped as, well, what was she doing? What was she wearing? What was this? What was that? They're trying to
Yep.
find a reason why it could be her fault because they're looking at it from what something called a just world theory, which says if something happens, it has to happen for a reason. And then, of course, that is victim blaming, right?
That is victim blaming. That is not okay.
That is complete victim blaming.
Yeah, that's a
Whereas
problem.
whereas on the other side of it, you're sitting in your office with somebody and you see them in complete misery, and they're convinced that the only pathway forward is for the person who has hurt them to do all of the fixing. In essence, what they're choosing to say is, I can't get better unless this other person who has hurt me gets better too. And then what that does is it actually has them giving their own power away to be able to move forward with their life, to do their own healing. And in a certain sense, they're mentally choosing to stay in the trauma that happened in the past
Hmm.
rather than being able to look at their lives and say, I don't have to live here anymore. Like I can take my power back. I don't have to wait for this person. Now, if somebody does make that mistake and hurt you and they do their work and they go try to make amends and they say they're sorry and they work really hard, even though they can't fully fix it, that can help in the process sometimes. That really can be helpful.
Sure.
But sometimes you're not going to get that. And
Right.
if you don't get that, you don't have to stay a slave to those hard feelings of pain, resentment, lack of justice, everything else that's there, even though it's normal to spend some time there.
Even if you get that from your partner, that your partner is really remorseful and works hard and tries to do everything they can for you, even if you get that from them, you still have the responsibility to do your own healing work. And I've seen plenty of partners who have somebody who is working recovery and trying to fix it, and they still stay in a really stuck place. Um, Will Smith's thing about fault versus responsibility. Um, fault is accountability is a real thing. I believe you do something bad, it's like, oh, you're accountable for that. You did that, right? But responsibility, I really love that word. If you break that word down, responsibility, my ability to respond to something. It might be someone else's fault. It doesn't take away my responsibility. And my responsibility, if I let go of responsibility to do my own healing, then I'm letting go of my ability to respond to the situation, and I am losing um I'm losing an opportunity to move forward and to move out of this because I'm letting go of that responsibility, right? So yes, it might be their fault. They can be accountable for what they've done. It is still my responsibility.
Yeah, and in the type of work that we do, Brannon, I think this is something that's just really hard on both sides, from both being betrayed and also being the one who's done the betraying a lot of times. And I've been in this side of like doing the betraying before, and it's a hard reality to come to realize that you've gone and done something and broken certain things that you can't fix on your own. Some of the things, some of the damage that you do when you hurt your partner is stuff that even if you tried, you can't fix it all on your own.
That's an interesting perspective from the other side
You
of
can
like, I feel
try.
so bad. This is my fault. I want to clean this up. And it's not fair that I can't fix this completely. And
It's
you
like
can't.
it's like the Humpty Dumpty thing. It's like all the king's horses and all the king's men. I can't put it all back together again. Even if my heart said I wanted to, I can't do it. And a lot of times what ends up happening is like on from the betrayer side, they actually have to come to a place of acceptance that they will do all they can and then surrender the rest to something or somebody bigger than them. Because if they keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and feeling like it's all their responsibility, all it does is fuel more shame back around rather than going, I will do everything in my power. And then I have to surrender that at the end of the day, my partner's heart, my partner's healing is in the hands of something or somebody bigger than me. And on the flip side, the one who's been betrayed, you probably get this happen a lot, but it's usually after significant time in treatment, the partner who's been betrayed will come into my office and they'll say something like, "Man, I got a problem." I'm like, "What's your problem?" And they say, "Well, my partner is in full recovery and I know it." I'm like, "Well, that's awesome. What's the
Yeah.
problem?" You know? And what's the problem? And they're like, "I'm still miserable." It's like, "Oh, hallelujah. Let's go to work."
Hmm.
Like now you know that. Now you can surrender all of that. Now you can look yourself in the mirror and go, why am I still miserable? It sucks that you're there, but now there's nobody in the way of your path to happiness now. Your partner is no longer in your way because you realize that they can't do anything else.
Right.
Now that accountability, even though it sounds gross, is actually the pathway to freedom.
Yeah. Accountability that I am choosing to stay where I'm at.
Like I'm not gonna get better by watching my partner anymore.
I'm justified in my anger. I'm justified in waiting for them to fix this. I'm justified in all of those things. I'm totally
It's
justified.
it's valid.
And I can get validation from therapists and friends and everybody that tells me, yeah, it's okay that you're right where you're at. And it is okay. It's valid. But
But
it's
what is
your,
the outcome?
yeah, it's your choice. It's
What
your
is the outcome?
choice. Yeah, what's the outcome of that? Right? Um, and it's this, what we'll call it a dialectic just for your sake, Tyler.
Thanks. I love
Uh,
dialectics.
there's this dialectic here of your pain can be completely valid and you're responsible for your own healing. Um,
Both are
and
true at the same time.
both can be true at the same time. It's not cool what's happened. And if you want to get better, you got to get to work. Um, and that's hard to hear. Um, and right at the get go, Tyler, I don't think that's the right thing
Oh,
to like let the get go. You're supposed to feel a sense of sadness, anger, intense emotions that are just like, ugh, like this is the worst.
that's
That's
human.
okay. And you don't need a therapist or Tyler and Brandon coming around and being like, yep, but now you're responsible for your healing. You
First
don't need,
session. Can you
yeah.
imagine the first session, Brandon? Us having
Like,
this
boom,
conversation?
you just had D-Day yesterday.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, you're responsible. You better get to work.
yeah.
You don't need that then. You need a little bit of time to just feel whatever you're feeling.
You need some
And
validation. You
you
need
need some
some.
validation in those feelings. But after that, after you understand that it's okay that you feel what you're feeling, then it's time to look yourself in the mirror a little bit. Now where do we go? And Tyler, I want to ask you if we could kind of shift to this now. When we say do your own work or go through this process of healing, what does that mean? What is it like? Okay, I'm open to that. I'll do the work. Give me the books. Give me the program. Give me the whatever. Like, what work is there to be done for somebody who's been betrayed? What are they responsible for?
Uh, yeah, this is perfect place for us to be going. I think our listeners are probably wondering this. So back to what you said, Brandon. I'm just gonna like map this out for a second in my own brain, and you can fill in the gaps or challenge whatever I say. I'm thinking of a betrayed person, spouse coming into my office, and it seems to follow kind of a typical pattern. All right. The first one is that they're swimming in their own brains and their thoughts, their emotions. Their emotions are like a big roller coaster. And so the first thing that seems to be happening is that there needs to be room and space to have all of the emotions that are going on there. So yes, it is valid. Like all the questions that are there, all the anger that's there, all the sadness that's there, all the hopelessness that comes up, all of that stuff is normal. And if you have a safe landing spot to have someone say, I get it, like it's okay. You could feel this way, like anyone would in your shoes. That allows then for some safety to be established. And then you start to plant your feet emotionally and you start to get your head back and you start to be able to think clearly and you start to be able to regulate your emotions a little bit better. Then you start to move into taking your power back. So, and then when you start to take your power back, that's things like doing the things that are inside of your control given the situation, which would be things like self-care, lots of like the daily charge that we talk about sometimes, getting really committed to the daily charge, building a really good team that allows you to have both support and structure and a push for change. Um, Submitting yourself to the practice of mindfulness and then learning to kind of reclaim and understand what your values are and then start to set healthy boundaries around your true values. And inside of that, what you do is you start to facilitate change in your life and you start to invite change in the system that you're currently in, whether that's going to be to repair the relationship or to release the relationship through the pursuit of your boundaries based on your values.
Now you make that sound kind of easy in terms of like that's great. That
There's a whole other side to it too, Brandon, which is that through all of that, there's the up and down part of the grieving process.
yeah.
There's going to be waves of emotion. There's going to be waves of sadness. There's going to be waves of anger. There's going to be waves of bargaining. There's going to be waves of denial. There's going to be waves of acceptance. And those acceptance,
Yep.
they're going to feel good for a minute, but then you're going to lose it. So you're kind of doing this grieving cycle at the same time that you're trying to like take ownership for your own healing
Yeah, both are happening
in time.
simultaneously. And also ownership for your own healing, it requires it's like if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. And so it requires a lot of courage, a lot of facing fears in order to shift some things that you need to shift in your life. So, like, I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm a partner who's very, very, in quotation marks, forgiving. Like, okay, I'll just forgive. Okay, I'll be the doormat. I'll just take it on. I'll just, whatever. When you've experienced betrayal, then you're ripe for being walked on by that betrayer. And if they're a manipulator and if they're right, like, and so in the midst of the grieving process of, ouch, that really hurts. Now I'm looking at something like, why have I been a doormat? Well, why am I so forgiving? And I'm using that good part of my heart to avoid conflict and difficulty in a relationship. And so as I do my own healing, I need to look at that and really understand where that comes from and understand what kind of protective parts are there and actually unburden those parts and step into some courage and step into some power and have some healthy boundaries. You can see the process there. Like, it's not easy. You have to start doing things that you've never done before. And this is just one example, right?
Yeah, well, that's what you're talking about, Brannon, is this is as you kind of get your feet planted again and you learn to regulate your emotions and you kind of start to know that you're grounded, then you start looking at your values. And the hard part is that you'll start to find that certain values tend to go into conflict with each other over certain situations.
Yeah,
Right. So what you just described is the conflict of the value of I need to not be a doormat anymore, but I still want to be a forgiving person.
right,
Now I have to go on a quest to understand what the values are behind those two statements and then figure out what the healthy boundary is to protect both. Which, by the way, in that one, forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is not getting walked on over and over again.
right.
Forgiveness, a lot of times, the pathway to forgiveness is through the right boundary.
Right. That's why I put forgiveness in quotation marks. Because you're absolutely right. Like, you have to have safety, you have to have those boundaries in order to fully surrender and accept what has happened. Um, that's just an example. If I can I give one more example?
Sure.
Let's say I'm a partner who just shuts down and doesn't want to talk about the hard stuff. So it's just like I shut down. I won't go there. Right. And so then betrayal comes along, and it's like, okay, um, if I just shut down and I swallow this and I just can't talk about it, it's going to start affecting my mental health. It's going to start affecting my physical health. Like, I've got to process some things and I got to talk through some things. But that's the last thing that I know how to do because I've learned how to cope by shutting down. Right. So then you do your own work that you're responsible for your work, and you learn how to regulate your emotions. You learn how to process your emotions. You learn how to be honest. You learn how to be vulnerable, and you start to actually get some of this stuff out. Now, that's hard to do. It's hard to do. And it's easier to be angry at your partner and not do that hard work. It really is easier to stay there, but
Sure.
it alleviates the long-term suffering by learning how to actually deal with it. And that's where, and I say this carefully because I know it's triggering, but that's where the the situation in your relationship actually is a blessing to you and calling you up to actually become a more healthy human being. Um, right? There's an opportunity there.
Yeah, you're a big fan of this. Byron Katie, The Work is coming to mind right now, Brannon.
Hmm.
Have you ever done like some of the work inside your groups at all or with any of your
Oh, people love it and hate it. It's
they
polarizing.
they love it because they know it's true and they hate it because
Yeah.
it's so hard. And basically the essence of this is that Byron Katie has something called The Work and you can go look it up if you want. But basically at the end of the day, you take whatever the situation is, like my partner betrayed me. And then there's this set of questions that you ask yourself, and you kind of help try to alleviate your suffering by following the questions. But the very last question isn't really a question, it's a statement. And the statement is, I look forward to blank. I look forward to being cheated on again. I look forward to being misunderstood. I look forward to being lied to again. And according to Byron Katie, until you can honestly answer yes to that question, your work is not done.
Yeah.
So you
So
hear that? Like people are
you might have
twisting.
just gone too far, Tyler. But
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it sounds crazy.
It
Like
sounds
what you're saying sounds, and this is why it's polarizing. Because ultimately, what Byron Katie is doing is she asks these questions to get down to your power and what you're accountable for. And like it's so easy to give that away to play the victim. Um, and if you've been victimized, like legitly, it's easy to stay stuck there. But you still have that responsibility. You still have that power, and that's what Byron Katie like doesn't let people out of.
Yeah, what she's really saying, and this is like you think about this from a different angle, you know, and what she's actually saying is actually quite powerful. That the ability to stay even-minded in pretty much any situation is actually already inside of each of us, and that I could become a fair proof not by making my partner not cheat on me, but by knowing that I have the resources inside of myself to completely take care of myself and know that I can manage my emotions.
Right.
So
Right.
if I so now all of a sudden the fear and the worry and everything else that would suck if it happened, but I know how to handle it and I can trust myself and because of that I could suffer less. Or I'm thinking of like the whole Viktor Frankl story
I
of
was just thinking of that.
right? Where he's in certain situations, he's in a German concentration camp and he's literally watching people get beat to death right next to him. And somehow inside of himself, he's able to go to places where he can feel nothing but peace and gratitude.
Well, yeah, and it maybe that sounds a little heartless, but I'm sure he felt the fear and the pain and those things as well. But then he realized, okay, what do I do with this?
What
I
can
get
I?
a I'm a decide. He says I'm a deciding being. Um, he's a perfect case study because he was in the most extreme situation when it comes to the power of you and what you're able to create inside yourself. And he while he was in there, he basically developed a whole new
Logotherapy.
modality, yeah, therapy. And so he was like kind of using this situation to understand some things and to grow. And he knew he was in there. He knew he was stuck. He knew that there wasn't anything else he could do, and so that was the option that he had. Um, and it would have been easy to just be hopeless. It would have been easy to just be so angry and you know um
I remember him like the one story that's coming to mind just thinking about this is you're in a German concentration camp. You get fed like a scoop of like watered down soup every day, barely enough to survive on, not really enough to survive on. And most people look at it and be like, man, these conditions are horrible. And he talks about going through the soup line and one day getting an extra pea in the bottom of his soup and just feeling so much gratitude for that. Like, like,
yeah,
oh man, what a gift, you know?
and he just is so happy. Yeah, yeah. um yeah, the beautiful thing is that our peace doesn't happen externally. It happens within us. And pain comes, we none of us can avoid that in life. Pain comes in different forms to different people. And we get to choose whether we want to get back to that place of peace or not when pain comes into our life. And as manipulative or difficult or hard your situation is with your partner, you get to choose that. You still get to choose that. And there's ways for you. Uh, there's beautiful ways. And a lot of times people don't want to hear this, but there are ways for you to get there, to do your healing, to do your work, to get there, regardless of their recovery.
Amen. Yeah, Brandon. So you asked a question earlier, and I kind of started talking, but I don't know. I gave a really great answer. Let's give you a chance to answer your own question. Is what does that pathway then look like?
Yeah, I think for everyone, it's a little different with the same principles. So when when difficulty comes up, it makes things more apparent. That there's glaring things that are like, oh, I don't have any friends. I don't have a support system. Why? Why am I so isolated? And so the work is to become a healthy human being and to be balanced, to love yourself, to practice self-compassion, to feel purpose, to desensitize some of your trauma so that you're not living in a state of fear all the time. And so there's a process that we go through, and you mentioned it. We first prepare to go through it. We dive deep into the scary stuff. We deal with the
By
demons,
itself.
the biggest fears, the biggest triggers, the trauma. We desensitize that. We unburden those parts. You get very conscious and get to know yourself really, really well, and learn how to trust yourself and have confidence. And that's you stay in that place for a while and learn how to do that. And as you do that, you then start to really step into shifting some things in your life. When you have those boundaries, when you show up authentically, when you resonate in a place of self acceptance and love, things start to change around you. Um, and and you learn how to do that. And you also learn, and we were talking about this yesterday in the car, um, you also learn how to accept life as it is and know that the work never really ends. Um, but now you know how to do it, and so it's a beautiful process that you get to go through again and again as you accept those things. So ultimately, you get to this place of acceptance, and
You say,
resilience.
when you say acceptance, you're also saying acceptance of things as they are, right? It's
That yeah,
not, people have a hard time with that word where they think acceptance means okay with and I agree with everything that's happened to me. And that's not what you're saying. You're saying acceptance is I'm living in reality, which then means my choices are made more from a place of reality because I
yeah.
things as they are.
And
So,
another level to that would be gratitude. So it's like I'm living in reality now. I'm starting to feel gratitude for my life and for what is.
right. Which means then you can learn to be grateful for a life that is going to be filled with nonstop potential for growth, which means by nature that's going to constantly have challenges and struggles.
Yeah. Um, sure. That's you think of it this way. If I were to give you a big math equation, like a calculus equation or something, I forget what those are called. I used to do them in college, but um, you got to solve something big, right? What would you do?
What do you mean? What would I do?
Like if I gave you a big old calculus thing and I was like, here, figure this out, you'd probably be like, oh, geez, like
Probably go type it into Chat GPT, man.
I don't know where to start. Now, what if there was this nerd that loves math and he was bored and it's like, hey, let me give this to you.
It's like, yes, I got something to do.
Heck yeah. Like here, yeah, sweet. A challenge,
A puzzle.
a puzzle, a challenge. It's something that's going to push me and make yeah, it's hard. It's a math problem, right? But through doing that math problem, I get to grow. I get to learn. And it's if you can approach life that way, when COVID rolls around or when your kid hates you for the day or whatever, and it's like, oh, interesting. Let's check this problem out, right? Let's roll with this. Let's learn how to show up healthy through these things. That's the nature of life.
Yeah, and the choice to accept that and embrace that already decreases your suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the radical acceptance of the nature of this life. And instead of trying to control life and not have any problems, it's having open arms with the problems as they come and then having gratitude for the growth that you're having. So this is the bigger, deeper stuff. The process for somebody, first feel the pain. Second, get some support and some validation in your pain. Third, own what's in your control and what you're responsible for. Fourth, dive deep, like dig down and dive deep and do the hard work.
on yourself.
Yep. Where was I? Fourth, fifth. Um, Once you've done that, it's almost like rebirth. Start to create life on its terms. Like start to create what is in your power. And sixth, live in a place of acceptance and gratitude, and then do it all over again. That's kind of the process that you go through. And there's a way to do all of that work. You can work through all of those things depending on where you're at in that process.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
you know what's interesting, Tyler? That it's the same thing for the betrayer, right? It's the
yeah,
same. It's the same work
yeah, basically the same
in
thing.
many ways.
Yeah, a lot of the action of the betrayer is actually has some of the same kinds of roots, which is that shame and
The shame, the trauma. Yep.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So it's the same work.
Yeah,
So
that's well.
Tyler, any last things you'd like to say to?
No, I'm just having this go through me as you were talking, Brannon. Just it's not just about the betrayal part of it, like how different it is. Like, um, I'm I'm in my 40s. I've got two hip replacements. I spent a lot of my, like it could be any situation in life. I spent a lot of my time actually taking pride in my physical abilities and my ability to be athletic and do certain things. I wanted to run marathons. I wanted to get fast enough to go to Boston. And after my first marathon, my hips started hurting so bad that I went to the doctor and I had to have hip replacements. And both of the doctors that I worked with said, we suggest you probably don't do long distance running too much anymore on two hip replacements. And I fought and fought and fought. And what you were saying is actually the pathway forward is that instead of fighting the reality of my situation, my life would actually be much better and less suffering and more joy when I finally come to a place of acceptance of I now get to see what life is like with two hip replacements.
Mm-hmm.
I now
Yeah.
get to understand that I'm more than my physical abilities and my athleticism.
Yep.
I now get to realize that I'm a more complete human being than I thought I was.
Yes.
And there's opportunity even inside of something that I wouldn't choose for myself originally. And coming to that place of acceptance instantly brings more joy.
Right. And it also gives you more consciousness and power to move forward. So now you get to choose where you go from there. But if you're stuck in the past and rejecting the reality and fighting against it, you're spending all your time and energy doing that,
Yeah.
right?
Raging over something you can't change anyway.
Yeah. And again, we say that and at the risk of somebody who's been betrayed feeling invalidated. We get your pain. We understand it. And it's real and it's okay. And you get to choose whether you want to move through this process or not and get to that place of acceptance or not.
Yeah.
All right, Tyler.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Thank you to those of you who are listening. Hopefully, this is helpful to some, and we'd love to hear your feedback or your thoughts on this topic. Straighten me and Brandon out if we're wrong about it. And until next time, you guys keep on keeping on.
See ya.